Hello everyone, welcome back to Mentally Tough Coaching, where I'm giving you the tools and the confidence to teach the mental aspect, in particular mental toughness, to your athletes. Before we get into how to train mental toughness, let's go over what mental toughness even is. You've probably heard this term hundreds of times throughout your coaching career, whether that be from other coaches, the media, newspaper, whatever. Either way, you've heard mental toughness before, I'm willing to bet. The problem with the term mental toughness is that it's subjective. My definition might be different than yours. Myself, I would define mental toughness as having the psychological edge that allows us to overcome the many challenges that we face both in sport and life in general. Psychological edge may include things like coping skills, emotional control, and mindfulness. With that being said, the definition that really stood out to me during my research is one by Jones in 2002. The reason that I find their definition to be so effective is because they actually used elite athletes to come up with an agreed upon definition. Obviously, in becoming an elite athlete, you would have to say that they have some of those psychological abilities as well as mental toughness in general. So Jones in 2002 used 10 international athletes to come up with the agreed upon definition. So the study was broken up into 3 groups: the focus group, individual interviews, and then they had the athletes actually rate the different attributes that they thought made up mental toughness. So now I'm going to put the definition that they came up with on the screen because it is kind of lengthy and it'll be easier to kind of understand when you can see it, and then we'll kind of break down word by word what the definition is actually meaning. So the definition that they came up with was having the natural or developed psychological edge that enables you to generally cope better than your opponents with the many demands, competition, training, or lifestyle that sport places on a performer, and specifically be more consistent and better than your opponents in remaining determined, focused, confident, and in control under pressure. So let's break this down a little bit. Natural or developed. That means that athletes can either be born with this psychological edge, but they also can develop it over time. The next word that kind of sticks out is generally when talking about the ability to cope better than your opponents. Obviously, when it comes to sports, you're not going to be 100% every game. So just generally, you're able to cope with the many demands better than your opponent. Another thing that sticks out to me that I really like about this definition is that it talks about the demands in competition, training, and the lifestyle that sport places. Obviously, sport requires a lot of both physical and mental demands. So talking about the different aspects such as the competition being different than the training, which is also different than the lifestyle changes that many athletes go through, is very important. From there, the top 3 mental attributes that they found with these athletes were the ability to bounce back from setbacks, self-belief in one's ability to achieve their goals, and the third was their self-belief in their abilities to make them better than their opponent. Then in 2007, Jones and some other researchers actually wanted to further solidify their definition. So they brought in elite coaches, more elite athletes, as well as elite sports psychologists. And the word elite for coaches and sports psychologists was just simply that they worked with the elite athletes in a setting like the Olympics or at the top level. I do recognize that definition is one that's lengthy, and it might be harder for some of the younger athletes like the freshmen, maybe some 8th graders. It might be harder for them to understand truly what's going on. So for that reason, I wanted to bring in a few other definitions that you coaches might want to use instead with your athletes. Of course, I will put these on the screen so that you can see them and have a easier way of writing them down if you need to, and take it word for word from the research. So Gucciardi et al. In 2008 worked with Australian football players to form an understanding and define mental toughness. Their work concluded that mental toughness is a collection of values, attitudes, behaviors, and emotions that enable you to preserve and overcome any obstacles, adversity, or pressure experience, but also to maintain concentration and motivation when things are going well to consistently achieve your goals. Clough et al. In 2002 approached the term more quantitatively and wanted to create a inventory to try to understand mental toughness in a different way. They were actually tired of coaches coming up to them and saying, hey, we want you to increase our mental toughness among our athletes. And when researchers asked what the coaches meant by mental toughness, they didn't give a very good definition. All the coaches would come back with different things, so they wanted to create a collective definition or attributes that could kind of help understand mental toughness. So they call it the 4 C's: challenge, commitment, control, and confidence. This might be a good way to go for coaches, just simply because it is a little more easier to understand for the athletes, and then you can kind of help athletes understand where they're at and what C might need to be increased for them to be considered more mentally tough. So now let's get into why mental toughness is even important. We hear about it all the time, but why is it even important to develop? There was a research study done in 2012 by Dewhurst et al. That actually looked at individuals in the business, sport, and education context. The researchers used the MTQ-48, which was developed by Clough et al. In 2002, kind of like I mentioned before. And the researchers had the participants complete a directed forgetting task. So what that means is simply the researchers had 2 lists of words that they wanted the participants to remember and words that they wanted the participants to forget. The research found that those who scored higher in mental toughness were also able to recall more words that they were supposed to. This indicates that mental toughness can help prevent old information from interfering with acquiring new information. Obviously, extremely important in sport when learning new skills and new plays. Additionally, when an athlete makes a mistake, they're more likely to be able to put that mistake behind them and focus on what's coming up. Another benefit of mental toughness is viewing difficulties as an opportunity rather than an obstacle, as well as positive cognitions. Having these positive cognitions has shown to help cardiovascular recovery process when facing negative stressors. So not only has mental toughness shown to help with the cognitive side, but as well as the physical side. So one thing about a lot of the research in sports psych is you might hear a lot of the same names over and over again. So this next research that I'll be talking about was done by Crust and Clough in 2005. And what this research wanted to see is if that those who scored higher in mental toughness had higher physical endurance. So again, the researchers used the MTQ-48, which measures the mental toughness, and they had each participant hold a dumbbell at a 90-degree angle above a desk that was about 1.5% of their weight, so that it was equivalent for everybody. The measure of endurance was started as soon as the individual put the weight up at that 90-degree angle, and I'm sure you all can guess what the results were. Of course, those who scored higher on the mental toughness questionnaire were able to hold that weight for longer. The reasoning kind of leads back to the cognitions that we were recently talking about. The researchers believed that the participants appraised the difficult or uncomfortable situation differently than those who scored lower in mental toughness. For example, in this study, the mentally tough athletes were able to exert control in blocking out that discomfort that came with holding the weight for a long period of time. So it's really no surprise when we're hearing about the cognitive and the physical enhancements with mental toughness that, of course, performance will follow with it. A study by Ragab in 2015 found that those who are more mentally tough actually had higher effectiveness in their shot selection in handball participants. Similarly, Bell et al. In 2013 found that elite cricket players who were assigned to a mental toughness training program had a significantly higher batting score than those who were in a control group. Additionally, from the 2006 Sheard and Golby research that was discussed last episode, they found that there was increases in many constructs that they were measuring, which included self-esteem, confidence, and mental toughness. Not only that, but the swimmers actually had decreased times in 3 different strokes all over 200 meters, so some of those longer swims. With that being said, I hope you are all understanding what the research defines mental toughness as well as the research that backs up the importance of mental toughness and how it can improve the abilities and the success of your athletes. As you can see, my layout's changing. I hope to keep getting better. I hope to keep giving you guys the tools that you need to see some more accomplishments and successes with your athletes. So drop a like. Let me know if there's any questions that I can answer. Make sure you subscribe. Keep watching. Like I said, 1 to 2 videos a week. I appreciate you all. Have a great day.